The exercise files for today's course are located in the video description below. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Access Intermediate. This comprehensive training program is designed to take your Microsoft Access skills to the next level. Now, throughout this course, you'll dive deeper into the power of Access databases, learning advanced techniques to manipulate, analyze, and present your data more effectively. In this course, you'll learn advanced select queries, including criteria, and/or conditions and wildcards. We'll learn about calculated fields to create new data based on existing information, data summaries and crosstab queries for insightful data analysis, and also action queries to modify your data, including update, append, and make table queries. Besides that, we'll get into query joins to combine data from multiple tables, parameter queries for dynamic data filtering, and various built-in functions like month, date diff, and if to enhance your queries. Now, by the end of this course, you'll have a solid understanding of these intermediate access concepts and be able to create more complex, powerful databases. So let's get right into it.
Looking to support our channel and get a great deal? Become a member today to unlock ad-free videos. That's right, your favorite courses without a single ad. Interested in a specific video? Purchase one of our ad-free courses individually. Looking for even more? Gain access to exams, certificates, and exclusive content at LearnitAnytime.com. More information can be found in the video description below.
The first thing we're going to learn about is how to create a query. Now, in our last video, we've talked about all the different objects, and we're going to get a deeper dive into all of them. Last class, we learned about tables and how we can create tables or even manipulate pre-existing tables. Now we're going to talk about how we can create queries from tables. So let's open up our Northwind example file here. You can click open, and if you do need to enable that security, you'll see the yellow bar across and you can click enable. You'll remember that we got this little entrance or welcome here, and we can just click OK, and we can close out the main switch. So last time we talked about all these different objects: tables, queries, forms, reports, macros, and even modules. Now we're going to take a deeper dive into queries. So we're going to talk about everything queries today. Now, if you do still see pages here, just simply right click and you can hide pages. We don't use pages anymore. They're sort of out of date. They're not really updated anymore by Microsoft, and we don't use them. So we're just going to use our queries for today. You'll see there's quite a few queries already in here that were pre-created for this example file, but we want to create one ourselves. Now, to create a query, all we have to do is go to the Create tab, and inside of the Create tab, you'll see here our queries command group. And it sort of goes, once again, in that order. We have tables, tables, queries, queries, forms, forms, reports, reports, macros and code, and then macros and modules. So it's sort of in that same order that it is in this Access object pane. So we're going to click on Query Design. You can use a query wizard, but we're just going to build this out using a select query. So let's all click on Query Design. And the first thing it asks us is, well, what table do you want to use? What are you trying to query? We're going to say that we want to query, let's do the orders. So we're going to choose the orders table and just double click on it. It's going to add that orders table right over here for us, and you can click and expand it, click and drag, resize it any way you like, so we can see everything that's in this table. And what we now want to do is just double click on what we want to see in our query. We don't have to know any type of SQL code or anything like that. We're just simply clicking and it's building it for us. So it's known as a low-code query design. So let's say that we want to look at the order date. Double click on that. Let's look at the order. Well, let's do the order ID and then the order date. Let's do ship date. And by the way, if you did click order date, you can always just go back down here and reselect and reorder them, which is nice. It's, once again, super user-friendly. That's what I love about this application. So we have order ID, order date, ship date. Let's do ship via as well. and let's do ship country. Once you have everything that you want to see from these tables, what we can then do is go to the Query Design tab up top here, go to the Results command group, and choose Run as that little exclamation mark. We'll give that a click. And look at this. We've now created our first query by using the select. And all we had to do was double click, but really built into it, we are using the select clause. Now, if you want to see the actual code, you can always go to the View tab here, and you can see the SQL view. So how is it actually coded out? And you'll notice in there is going to be that select clause. So select this, and that from the orders table. So if you do know a little bit of SQL language, you can code this yourselves in the SQL view. But really, I just want to take a look at the datasheet view at my results. If I ever want to go back in and start to manipulate this query, you can go back to that view and go to Design View, where it'll bring us back and we can start to do some sort of filtering, or maybe we want to find some certain data or a certain country, right? So try this out. Create the query using just the double clicks, right? You don't have to actually code this out. And then when we get back, we're going to go over how to filter out what we want to see. What we're going to be learning about next is how we can now filter out this query. Maybe we don't want to have to see all of the countries. We just simply want to see USA. So let's go back to our design view, and where we're going to put the criteria, you'll see criteria row here, is going to be under ship country because we want to only see USA. So I'm going to give that a click. I'm then going to write USA. Now, you can write it all lowercase, you can write it all uppercase, you could just do a capital U. It doesn't matter, it's not case sensitive. So I'll just write USA. And I'm going to click Run. And now you'll see we're only searching for ship countries in the USA. If we go back over now to our SQL view, you'll see it's using a where clause to do this. So if you're once again familiar with SQL code, where clauses allow for us to filter our queries. But once again, this is low code, so I'll go back to my design view. You'll also see here it put in the quotes for us, which was really nice of them. But yeah, you can go in and you can filter for whatever you like. So try this out, and then I'm going to show you that sometimes when we filter, it's not going to always work to the way we want. Sometimes we're going to get a little bit of an error. Now that we've filtered for USA, let's say that we want to filter for something else. Maybe I don't want USA anymore, so I'll take that out. Maybe I want to filter for the certain type of shipping method. So if I run this without any filters, let's take a look at what shipping methods we have. We have here Speedy Express, we have United Package, we have Federal Shipping. And yeah, let's say we wanted United Package. I want to take a look at all the United Package filters. So you would think, well, we just learned about this. We could go back to design view, go into ship via column this time under criteria, and we could type in United Package, and run this. But you're going to get this specific error. It's called the data type mismatch error. And the reason this is happening is because someone created a drop-down list via wizard lookup like we did in our introduction course. So to fix this, we need to go to the shippers table, and we have to look at the index ID to see which one is United Package, because it's telling us they don't recognize this. So if we just open up our shippers table, we can go over to the tables in our object pane here and double click on shippers. You'll see here that we have a shipper ID that's associated with each of these packages. So number 1 is Speedy Express, 2 is United Package, and 3 is Federal Shipping. So if we want to filter for United Package, we're going to be using the 2. So we can close out this table, just click the little X, and under Ship Via Criteria, instead of writing United Package, we're going to just put a 2 in there. Now we're going to click Run, go back to Query Design, Run, and look at that. We're now only looking at United Package shippings. So sometimes you'll run into that. You have to know your data, know what tables you have. You can go back in, take a look if there's any indexing, and then put that instead. But that's an error that you'll probably get most common, is that data type mismatch when you're doing any sort of filtering. So try that out on your own. And when we come back, we're going to talk about two conditions and an or. When we're dealing with filtering, you see we could put in a filter and it does the filter for us perfectly. But what happens if I just want more than one? Maybe I want to look at, let's say, all of our owners that are customers here, and maybe I want to look at them in the USA. Well, the first thing I need to do is switch my table because we don't have our customers' information here, just their ID. So instead, I want to switch to the customers table. Now, to remove a table from our query, just right-click on the object and click on Remove Table. And that's going to clear out our query. Next, we're going to go back over to the right where we have a list of all our tables, and let's pull the customers tables for this one. I'm going to double click on customer. And once again, you can expand this if you like to see all the different fields. And for this one, let's say we want to grab the company name, the contact's name, their title, if they're a sales rep or a marketing rep or an owner, and what country they're in. And then we can run that query by clicking run again. And we see here the company's name, their contact name, their title, their country. And really all I want to see are owners in the USA. So this time we're going to go back to the design view, and underneath contact title, we'll put in the criteria owner. And then we're going to put in USA under country. And this creates an automatic and condition, which means we need it to meet both of these criteria. They need to be an owner and they need to be from the USA. And when we click run, you'll see we have two owners from the USA. And this works really well. But let's say we now want either USA or owner. Doesn't matter if they're from the USA or not. If they're from the USA, show it. If they're an owner, show it. Well, in this case, we need to use the or section. So I'm going to go back to the design view. And instead of having the USA under criteria cell, I'm going to actually move USA here to the or cell. We can still keep owner in the criteria, but we'll move USA. And you could just delete it and just write USA in the or. Once we do that, it's going to be a different query. If we run this query, you'll see we have many different options now because it's saying whether they're an owner or whether they're from the USA. So if they're owners, they're listed. And if they're from USA, they're listed. So we get a different type of list. So that difference between and means that we need both of them. They both need to be USA and owner and meet that criteria, or saying either USA or owner. We don't mind. So that's the big difference between and or. But we also have other conditions as well. One like the between condition, right? Let's use a different table for this one. We're going to go back over to our view and switch it to the design view. And let's right click on the customer table and remove it. Let's, for this example, use the employees table. So I'm going to double click on employees. Once again, you can always just take a look at what's in here. There's a lot in this one, so you might still have that little bit of drag, but not too much. And for this one, let's add in the employee ID, their first name, their title, and let's do the hire date as well. And if we've run that query there, we get a nice little list of employees, their names, their title, and when they were hired. Let's say that I want to see people, though, that are hired in 1993. Well, to do this, we can use the between condition. You'll see here that we have people that were hired in 1992 all the way through 1994, but I just want to return 1993. So I'm going to go back to that design view, and let's go to the hire date this time. And under criteria, we're going to use the between condition. So we're going to write the word between. And now we're going to put in between the first date of 1993 and the last date. So of course, January 1st, 1993. And we're going to use and, the word and, let's do 12/31, 1993. That's going to give us that full year there. And when we click on run, look at that. Now, I know what you're thinking. Are we really using the and? Well, sort of. It's sort of like the way we speak English, right? If I say, I'm thinking of a number between 1 and 10, I'm always using that and. And in this case isn't necessarily meaning both, right? Like we did in our and example, but it's just one of the key conditions that we have to write in our between. So just speaking it out loud, it'll even make more sense. Like, I want to see people between January 1st, 1993 and December 31st, 1993. And that's always how I remember to use that and, right? So now we have that. I'm going to go back to design view. Try this out on your own, but just note that all of our dates are now in pound signs. That's how you would normally write a date. But Access is smart enough to put all of those in there, just like our strings of text. When you write USA, it puts the quotes in automatically. When you put in the dates, it puts the pound signs automatically. So you can either write them or you don't need to. Access will know what you're saying and it'll fill in the blanks for you. So try this out, and when we come back, we'll get into how to sort our queries. Besides being able to filter our queries, we're able to sort our queries as well. So let us go back into our design view and get rid of our criteria here under hire date, where we use the between and conditions. We're going to bring back all of our information. And let's say that we want to sort this by first name. So 3 ways to do it. You can either go and run the query and then go to the little drop down on the column first name and choose sort A to Z or Z to A. And you'll notice this works really well. And then if you need to sort back to the original view, it's always good to have some sort of index or sequential numbering system, like the employee ID, where I can now sort smallest to largest and bring it back to the original with Nancy on top. The second way we can actually filter this is by going to the Home tab once we run our query results, and you'll see the sort and filter right here where we can choose to either sort A to Z or Z to A. So I can go in, choose ascending, or I can click on first name and choose ascending or descending order. If you want to remove the sort, once again, you can just remove the sort here, or you could just sort back by employee ID, and I'll click remove sort. But either way, whenever you're sorting, you'll always be able to remove the sort just by clicking remove sort. So 2 ways to do it after you run the actual results. Now, if you want to sort before you actually run the results here, go back to the design view, and you'll see down here, we actually have a sort row. So I can click in, and maybe I want to sort this once again by first name. If you click into it, you'll notice we get a drop down for ascending or descending. So I can choose ascending in this case and run my query. And now I'm automatically having that sort. You will notice though, when we run the query with the sort this way, we don't have the option to remove the sort. So that's because it's built into the query while we're running it. So you can either run the query and have the sort be a permanent thing, or you can just sort and filter and do all that fun stuff after the results. So it's really up to you. I'm going to go back over to that design. Now, not only, we can also turn this off to not sorted, but not only can we sort just by one singular item here, we can sort multi-levels. So we can sort by, let's say, first name and ascending, and then we can sort by title and ascending. So that's a multi-level sort. And when we run that, there we go. And then if I decide I want to do it the opposite way, I can go to design view. Maybe I want to sort this, let's say, in descending order, and sort this in descending order. I can run it that way. So multiple ways to do sorting, multiple ways for filtering as well. We're going to click on not sorted here and jump real quick into that filter after we run it. If I want to filter just for, let's say, my sales reps, remember that we do have the option in the Home tab to go in and we can filter We can use select filters, advanced filters, just like we did in our tables. So all of these tools are still the same. Just like in tables, we can do it in queries as well. And we can sort all of this. If I want to click the filter, it'll ask me what I'm filtering. I click in the title and click filter. What am I filtering? So if you took that first course, the introduction level course, you'll see here that there's a lot of that repetition of the way to manipulate these data sets in tables and in queries. All right, so try that out on your own. I'm going to go back to the design view. When we come back, we are going to get into using table fields with our criteria. So instead of just writing in our criteria, a certain hire date or a certain title, we can actually use table fields that already pre-exist to check things like inaccurate data, or if data was entered in the wrong way, data entry errors. We can do that. All right, so try this out. When we come back, we'll have some more fun. All right, we're going to talk about table fields and being able to use those as the criteria within our filtering. So let's say that we want to add in the birthday here for this example. So let's double click on birthday and add it to our query, and we're going to run it. So now we have the employee ID, their name, their title, their hire date, and their birthday. We're going to change Andrew's birthday. We'll pretend that somebody entered in the information wrong. Instead of 1952, we'll put in 1999. Now that we have that new updated birthday in there that we know is wrong, how can we tell if somebody entered something wrong in? Well, the first thing we're going to do is go back to our design view. And for the birthday criteria, we're going to showcase any of the hire dates that are greater than or equal to. And the reason this is going to be beneficial is because, well, if their birthday is actually greater than or equal to their hire date, well, that wouldn't really make sense, right? So go into criteria under birthday. We're going to do greater than or equal to. Now, at this point, we can start typing in hire date, but we can't just type it in regularly. Because it's a field, we have to use our square brackets. So we're going to use square bracket and then type in hire date. Now remember, it's all going to be in one. When we pull the query, of course, the labels will show that space, because when we were in there before and we were updating the captions, that's going to help us out. But right now, we're just going to do a greater than, equal than, and that square bracket, hire date, and square bracket. And it's going to all be one without a space. Next, we'll run this query, and it's going to only show us Andrew, because Andrew couldn't have been hired in 1992 if Andrew was born in 1999, right? So we see here that the data was entered wrong, and then we can go in and we can fix it. I think it was like 52 or whatever you want to put in there, you're fine. And then if we rerun this query again, there's going to be nothing, right? So sometimes it's important to utilize fields like the hire date. So we can use this field inside of the criteria, and we can start to compare our data in these queries. And this is something you'll be doing a lot when you're doing data analysis. All right, so try that out on your own. Remember that we do already rename the captions here. So when we type in hire date, there's no space because the actual name of that field is without a space. But when we run it from our first introduction lesson, you'll remember that we added in spaces here so that it looks a lot nicer than having no space. So that's just our caption there. If we go back into our design view, we would just put it in all as one word. So try that out. When we come back, we're going to talk about creating wildcards and then also saving the query. We're going to take a look at wildcards. Wildcards are placeholder characters that can represent one or more characters or values. So let's say that I just want to do a nice criteria for the title and pull everything that starts with an S. So the way we do that is we use S and then we use the asterisk symbol. This will allow us to pull the like condition, and like condition is our wildcard. So when we run this, now we're just seeing the title and everything that starts with an S. If we go into the SQL view, you'll see the like expression right after the where. So this is our like condition, saying S and any amount of characters after the S. We can also go the opposite way as well. So if I decide that I want to go back to the design view and look at anything that ends in R, I'll then do an asterisk symbol first with an R. And then when I click run, we see the two titles that end in R. So those wildcards can be very helpful. What we're going to do right now is let's go back to the design view though. We're going to get rid of that condition and let's just run this as a regular query. And what we're going to do is save it. Now to save it, we're just going to simply click the save icon all the way at the top left-hand corner. And when we do save this, we're saving this query. It's going to ask us to name it. So I'm going to click on save. It says, what should we name this query? We'll just name it fun query for right now. And then we'll click OK. Now I can close out this query. And whenever I want to pull it up again, under the queries, you'll see it right there. You can just pull it up and start to manipulate it in any way that you like. So a little different from tables. Tables just have our data in there. Queries allow for us to filter and manipulate the data in a meaningful way. So try that out on your own, save the query, and the next thing we'll get into are calculated fields. Now that we know a little bit more about creating a query, being able to sort it and filter it, let's create another query and talk about calculated fields. A calculated field allows us to create new fields by manipulating pre-existing ones, or even adding them, or multiplying them, or dividing them to create new fields that we need. So let's go over to the create button. We're going to create a query just like we did before in the queries command group and choose query design. And let's use for this example, the order details table. So we'll just double click on that. And you'll see it's not that big of a table. Let's take in our product ID. Let's take our unit price. And let's take our quantity. Then we can run that query. And you'll see we have our unit prices, our quantities. That looks great. Now let us save this query. You can name it whatever you like. I'm just going to call it Joe's query. And let's go back to the design view. Now let's say that we want to look at something else. Maybe, for instance, our total sales. We actually don't have total sales here in this table. So we need to create a calculated field by multiplying the unit price times the quantity, and that will give us our total sales. To do this, we're going to click into the field cell here, and we are first going to name our new field. We're going to call it total sales. And remember, when we're creating that new field, we don't need a space here. We'll then put a colon, and we're going to write out our formula, which is unit price times quantity. Now, if you're having trouble seeing this, though, there's a little trick. If you just right-click in the field, you can go to zoom, and that will allow us to see it on a bigger level. So if you go to zoom, you'll see it. You can even change the font if you want to, change the sizing, make it a little bigger, smaller, whatever you like. And now we can write this out without having to like squint our eyes. So to do this, we're first going to take our unit price, which remember we put that into square brackets. We're going to use the asterisk symbol for multiplication, and we're going to multiply that by quantity and put that in square brackets. We'll then click OK. And now let's run it. And look at that. Looks perfect. All right, it works really well. Let's do another one. Maybe we want to take a look at projected sales, right? So we've now created this total sales. We can take a look at the projected sales as well. And we'll go in, design, and let's click into the next one. If you want to do the zoom, right click the zoom. And for projected sales, we'll call it projected sales. Put your colon. We're going to take the total sales we just created, and then we're going to multiply it by, let's just do a small increase. We'll do 1.1. And we'll click OK. And now when we run this, there it is. That's our projected sales amount. Now, you might not like the naming convention here, so of course, you can put a space in between this, just like we did when we were designing our tables in the first introduction class. You can go in, you can right click, and you can go to properties. Inside of those properties, you can put a caption, and you could do total sales with a space. And then we can do that with projected sales as well. Projected sales with a space. And then close that out, save it, and run it. And now it looks a lot better. So the caption will always showcase in the results, but really behind the scenes, there's no spacing. So take a moment and try that out. And then what we'll take a look at is a couple of really beneficial functions that we can use inside of these tables. As of now, we've been using our one table order details to build queries, but maybe I want to add two tables to a query. So we can do that. If we click over here on our orders table and double click, we'll add that to this query, and you'll see it creates a relationship automatically for us, a many-to-one relationship. And it's creating that based off of the order ID. So in this orders table, there's one unique ID for each. And in this order details, there's many order IDs. And that makes sense because, well, people might have ordered more than one item. What we can now do is start to incorporate these fields into this query as well. Maybe I have the product ID, unit price, quantity, and the calculated fields we created, but I also want to add in the order date. So I could double click on that. Now when I run this query, you'll see we have our order date in here too, and it's able to match it because of that relationship that it automatically created for us. But we're not done yet. We can use other functions such as month or MonthName to data mine more information from the order date here. For instance, maybe instead of it saying July, we want the numeric value of the date over here with a 7, right? 7 for July. So what we can do is go back to our design view. And before we even get started with building out this entire query, we need to save it. The reason being is because we're going to start to use functions, which means we're going to use pre-existing fields here and here to build this out. Now, if we don't save right now, it's only going to have the order details fields. So we need to make sure that we click the save button. That way, all of these fields can also be incorporated as long as they're in our query. And I'll show you what I mean in a second. So make sure you click save. Once we save this, we're then going to right click right next to the order dates, the field, and we're going to choose build. So right in that next column, right click, choose build. And that's going to open up the expression builder. Now, if you're familiar with Excel or Google Sheets, you're probably familiar with functions. And some of those functions actually do carry over into Access. Not all of them, but some of them. You'll see those functions are built in. It's known as functions, and you'll give the little plus symbol a click, and it'll showcase built-in functions. So we could double click on that, and you'll see categories. Our month function is actually under the date and time category. So give that a click, and then you'll see all the different functions we have access to, including month. Now, before we click on month, what you always want to do is name your new field. So we're going to call this order month. So I'm going to type order month, put our colon, and now we're ready to use the month function. So we can double click on that. Automatically, it's going to come up with expression and date placeholders, along with the month function itself. We don't really need the expression. If you actually keep that in there, it'll cause an error. So just press delete. You could just click on it. It'll highlight the whole thing. Press delete. And then we'll click into date. And because we have the order date as part of this query down here, if we go to Joe's query, we'll see all our different fields here. You'll see order date, product ID, projected sales, quantity, total sales, unit price. And that's the one we need. We need the order date, so we could just double click and it'll input it in there. Now we can click OK and run this query. And there we go. We get the numeric value of the month. 7's for July, 8's for August, 9 for September, and so on and so forth. Now at this point, we want to save once again. So I'm going to click on the save. And that's important to save. Otherwise, order month will not be a part of this again. So we always want to be sure that we're saving. So if we decide that we want to build something else, we can use now order month. Now, I don't mind the numeric value of the date, but we may want the categorical value. Maybe I want it to not just say 7, but I also want it to say July, either abbreviated or non-abbreviated. So I'm pulling the month name out. And there's a function called MonthName that will pull that out. So it'll look at this numeric value here, and these are indexed. So 7 means July, 8 means August, and you go through the months. So after you save, we're going to go back to design view. And right next to order month, we're going to right click again and choose build. This time, we're going to go to the same spot, built-in functions, date and time, but we're going to use the MonthName function. Now it's going to ask for 2 arguments this time. And before we even do that, we always want to, remember, name this. So I'm going to call it order month name and put my colon. For the month, we're going to choose the numeric value we just used. And that's why it was so important to save, because now I could go to Joe's query and grab that order month that we just created. If you don't save, you won't see it there. And it'll result in a function error. So I'm going to double click that and put it in there. For the abbreviation, you might be wondering, well, what do I put here? Well, we're actually going to put a Boolean factor. And if you don't know what the Boolean factor is, you can always get help on this function. So if you go to built-in functions, and you choose date and time, and you choose month name, you'll see in the bottom left-hand corner here, it has a clickable link. This link is a help link. So if you click on it, it'll actually open it up and it'll tell you what the syntax is. It'll tell you what month is. It says a numeric value for the month, which we already have. An abbreviation, it'll say optional, but you can put Boolean factors like true or false. True if you want it to be abbreviated, false if you don't. But if you don't put anything, it defaults to false, which means it won't be abbreviated. So we don't necessarily have to put true or false here. We can actually just delete it and then backspace that comma. Just like that. So it looks even nicer. We have the name of our new column. We have MonthName function, and we're just looking at the numeric value and transferring it into a categorical value. Once we click OK, we should be able to run this. And look, looks great. July, August. And if we wanted to change that, right, if we want this to be abbreviated, always remember, we can go back and do the right click, and we can do zoom. And we can actually put that comma and just put trim, and then click OK. Run this, and now you'll see it's abbreviated. So totally up to you on what you want. I actually don't mind it being non-abbreviated, so I'll just right click, zoom again, and just backspace. Run it, and there we go. Looks amazing. All right, so that looks great. We have other types of functions here. I'm going to click save again. You could pull out the year if you wanted to. If you want to try the year function on your own, go right ahead. Remember, you just right click, build, functions, built-in functions. Year would be under date and time, and it should be down here. And then you would just double click. If you don't know what the syntax is, just go to here. It'll open up and it'll explain to you what you need in there. You just need a date. But try this one out on your own. You can name it whatever you like. You can pause the video right here. I'll just do it real quick. I'll call this order year. But feel free to pause the video. You don't have to watch me. You can try it out, see if it works. And for the date, I'll choose the order date. Click OK. Run it. And there it is. Looks great. So I'll save that. And when we come back, we're going to talk about another really important function known as dateDiff. In our last example, we learned how we can use functions to either create new columns, or we've also talked about how we can create calculated fields by using pre-existing fields. What we're going to do next is use another type of function known as dateDiff function that will determine the difference between two dates. So in this example, we don't really need these columns we just created, like month, month name, or the year. So you'll see here, highlight those by clicking on the gray part of the column here, and then it'll click and drag, and then we'll click the delete button on our keyboards, just so that we have our just simplistic data again. So let's say we're looking at the order date, and I want to know how much time did it take from the order date to the time it shipped out. I want to make sure that our products aren't being shipped too late. So I'm going to double click and add in ship date here. So we have our order date and our ship date. Remember to click save, right? That way we actually have ship date available to us. And next, we're going to right click next to ship date, and we're going to use our expression builder. We're going to use this function known as dateDiff. It's going to be in the same place our other functions were, date and time, and you'll see it right there, dateDiff. Now, before we add that, we do want to name our new field. We're going to call it shipping time, put our colon, and then we can select dateDiff. And once again, we don't need that expression. We can just click on that expression placeholder and click delete. We'll see the dateDiff. And this one has quite a few things we need, right? So first off, it's asking for an interval. And remember, if you don't remember what the interval is, or you've never used this before, you can always go down to the bottom, give this a click, and it'll open up the syntax for you so you can take a look. So the interval is required. It's the interval of time you want to use to calculate the difference between two dates. So let's take a look at all the different interval arguments that there are here, such as year, quarter, month, day of the year. They have a ton of them. Now, I just want to see how many days have passed, so most likely we're going to be using this one, the day, which is a small d. You do need to put that in quotes, though, so that's really important. We want to make sure it's a string expression, it tells us here. So that means putting that in a quotation marks. So I think we have everything we need. We don't need the first of the year. We can click that, press delete. We don't need first day of the week. We can delete that too and get rid of those two commas. So the first thing is the interval. I'm just going to put in quotes a lowercase d, which means day. Date 1 is going to be our order date. So remember, we can click on Joe's query here and see all of them. That's why you always want to click save so you can see the ship date. So we're going to put in date 1, order date, and then date 2, shipped date. Now we can click OK. Let's run this query. How amazing is that? We have shipping times, 12, 12, 5, 4. So this looks amazing. And then we can always go back to design view. And maybe now what we want to do is add in the word days. Maybe we want it to say 12 days or 5 days. So what we'll do is we'll right click on ship time and go to build again, or you can even go to your zoom if you want to, whichever one. I'll do zoom for this one. If you want to use build, you can. So right now it's telling us that the ship time is the dateDiff, the interval d for days, order date, and the difference between the ship date. Now I simply want to add in the word days. So to do this, we're going to use an and sign, just like that. And we're going to type in quotes, a string of text with a space, and we could say days, and that string of text. So all it's doing is taking this whole thing, which equals a number, and it's adding in a space with days. We can click OK. If you went into the builder, it would have looked like this. So same exact thing. And when we run it, now it says 12 days, or 5 days, or 6 days. So that's a nice little thing you can add in. You can concatenate a string of text with the dateDiff function. Try that out on your own. And then when we come back, we're going to get into the IF function and how we can use that. The next function we're going to go over is the IF function. Now this function allows for us to ask a question, and based off of whether it's true or false, it'll do something different. So if it's true, it does one thing. If it's false, it does something different. Now, if you're familiar with the if function in Excel or in Google Sheets, it's practically the same thing. You have to have an expression, a comparison operator, and once you use that expression, if it's true, it'll do one thing or return one value. If it's false, it'll do something different or return a different value. So let's do that for, let's say that we want to create a new discount program that says that if our total sales, which is here, is greater than or equal to $200, well, then they'll get a 10% discount. And if not, well, then they get 0. So first thing we're going to do is switch our view back over to the design view, and we're going to right click next to shipping time and go to the build. That way we can get our expression builder. Now we're going to go to the functions, built-in functions, but this time we're going to use a category that's known as the program flow. So you'll go all the way down towards the bottom, you'll see program flow, and you'll see the if function. Now this if function looks a little different than the one you're probably used to. This is known as an immediate if. It's a little different. It's actually more simplistic, and you can't really nest any functions inside of this if. So I'll double click it, and it asks for 3 parts. The expression that's being tested, the part that's true, and the part that's false. So for us, we're going to take as the expression, we'll go to Joe's query, grab that total sales to put in there. And we're going to say that if the total sales is greater than or equal to 200, if that were to be true, well, then they're going to have a 10% discount. And that depends on, what their total sales are. So we'll just put in 0.1. And then if it's false, they do not get a discount. So it's going to be 0. Once you're done, I'll click OK. And if we run this query now, you'll see the expression. Now, you'll notice that we didn't name the column this time. And I did this on purpose so that you can see what it would turn out to be. It would just be expression 1. So it's always important to name your columns. I'm just going to call this column new discount. So we'll go back over to the design view. And then we also need to change it because it's showing only 0.1. I want it to look more like a percentage. So we'll fix that as well. So the first thing, I'm going to just right click. You can either go to the build or the zoom in this one. I'll do zoom. And I'm just going to call this new discount. And we'll click OK. The next thing we need to do is right click on this field. And we're going to choose properties to get our properties pane up. And we're going to choose to change the format of the percentage. All right, so you'll see the format right now has nothing in there. We'll click the drop down. We're going to choose percentage or percent. Once you're done with the property sheet, we can then click the X. You can also choose if you want any decimal places or not. I'm just going to keep it as a percentage with the decimal places. I don't mind, but you can change it if you like how many decimals there are. And now we'll click run. And there it is. If I decide I do want 0 decimal places, we'll go back to format. And then right underneath, you'll see decimal places. We'll just choose 0 and then run that as well. Okay. There we go. We see everyone that had total sales over will get 10% off. And you can even have fun with this where you can take the total sales minus out 110% to see what that actual discount would look like. So you can get really fancy with this if you like. But I'll just do that for you all real quick. I'll use the zoom for this one. So we can take, once again, the total sales. Make sure you put it in square brackets. And you can minus out. You want to do 1.1. The reason being is because 1%, right? Or the 0.1 is going to be 10%. The 1 is going to be 100%. So we're subtracting total sales minus 110%, which will give us that 10% discount. Otherwise, you would have to put it in more parentheses. And, well, we don't need to do that. So now you're going to see this. This does not look like the way I want it. So I do want to have some decimal places here. And we're going to just change that from a decimal or from a percentage, since we don't want it to really be a percentage. We want it to be a currency. If you want to have decimal places, we'll do too. We'll run that, and that's what it's going to be with the percentage, right? So that's 10% off. It was $16.96. Now it's $16.94.90. And then if they didn't get any discount, they get $0. So $14.84 to $14.82.90. That's a nice little way to create a new discount. And there it is. So try that if function out. If you want to go in and get a little creative and minus it out with 110%, you're more than welcome to. Or if you just want to do the first way, you can. I don't mind. But try it out. When we come back, we're going to switch gears. We're going to start talking about data summaries. One of the big things in querying is summarizing data. So what I want to do right now is let's change our data up. Let's go back over to the design view and let's get rid of all these fields that we already have. Remember, you can click on the gray part, top part of the columns, select them all. They'll darken and then press the delete key on your keyboard and we clear out our query. Now let's add ship via from our orders table. Double click on it and let's add the freight. And we're going to click on run. So now we're looking at products, ship via, and the freight as well. And what I want to do, let's go back to design view. Let's move this over. Let's get rid of the product ID as well and just have ship via and freight. What I want to do is summarize this now. I see each individual order, but how much total did I do in federal shipping versus Speedy Express versus United Package? So we're going to tell the system to total these up by grouping them by ship via. To do this, the first thing we need to do is go back over to our design view. And inside of our design view, under the query design tab, you'll see show/hide. And there you'll see totals. We're going to turn on these totals by clicking on it. And you'll see now over here we have a new row called total. And right now, I want to change the freight because I don't want to group by freight. I want to group by ship via. I'm going to click into group by there and choose sum because I actually want to summarize this entire thing. So I'll click the drop down, choose sum. So we're going to group by ship and we're going to sum up all the freights. And when we run this, we get a nice summarization here of how much we spent for each shipping method. Pretty amazing. This works well. Now, what happens though if I wanted to see how much I made per product, right? Well, then we have to mix what we learned before with what we're learning now. So let's go back over once again to the design view. And this time I'm going to delete these two. And let's clear our query here. And let's add in the product ID from the order details. Let's add the unit price. And let's add the quantity. Now, if you remember before, we created a calculated field for the total sales. And we're going to do the same thing right now. So take a moment if you want to pause before I go over this and try it out on your own. I know we did this before, so if you want to kind of test what you've learned, you can. But I'm going to right click. I'm going to go to zoom and I'm going to name this total sales. Put in my colon. I'm going to take the unit price. Remember to put it in square brackets. Oh, square brackets, not curly. And then we're going to multiply it by quantity. And then we'll click OK. So if we run this now, there we go. Just like last time, we created a calculated field. But we're not done yet, because what I now want to do is I want to see the total of total sales, right, per product. So we're going to change the unit price and quantity columns. We're going to actually delete those. We don't need those anymore. We can keep the total sales per product. We're going to keep the total on. It's on from before. You'll see group by. And we're going to group by our product. And we're going to summarize our total sales that we just created. And when we run that, we now get our total sales using a calculated field. So you can use data summaries with pre-existing fields, or you can use total sales that we just created with calculated fields. Totally up to you, right? So now this looks really nice. Last thing we could do, of course, is maybe we want to sort it in a certain order, right? We can always sort it or remove the sort. And we have a nice little query here. So let's save this query. It looks great. I'm happy with it. I'm going to click save. And now what we'll do is get into a new topic known as crosstab querying. Crosstab querying is very similar to pivot tables. All right, so take a moment, try out data summaries without calculated fields, with calculated fields, and then when you come back, we're going to get into some crosstab query. If you're an Excel user, then you've probably come across pivot tables. And pivot tables are really interchangeable rows and columns, and they allow for us to analyze data quickly. Well, a crosstab query is exactly that. It's a pivot table. We build it using rows, columns, and also values. So let's create a new query. We're going to actually take this query. We can close it down if you like. You can just save it if you haven't already saved it. If you want to go back to the design view and close it out up top in the top right-hand corner, you're more than welcome to. So I'm going to give that an X. And we're going to create a brand new query by going to the Create. We're going to once again go to the Query Design tab here. And then let's just choose inside of Query Design. You'll see Query Design Crosstab in the query type. So far, we've been just making select queries, right? Those queries have been just selecting, analyzing the data, looking at it. What we're now doing is creating a crosstab, right? So we're going to click on crosstab. And now that we have a crosstab, we're going to add the employees table. So go over to the add tables, click on employees. You'll see it right here. And you'll notice now that we're on a crosstab query type, we have a crosstab right over here. So you'll see crosstab is now one of those rows that we can input. So let's add the employees table. Let's do title. Let's do the country. Let's do their first name. So I want their title, their country, their first name. And for the title, what we're going to say is we're going to make the title a heading. So if you click into the crosstab, you'll see we have row heading, column heading, and value. We're going to make the title a row heading. So all my titles will be going down the rows. For the country, I actually want to say the country is going to be the column heading. So I'll have my columns going across, right? So the country will go across the columns. The titles will go down the rows. And then I want to see how many of each title and each country employees I have. So for my employees, or for the first name column, we're going to make those the value. So very similar to a pivot table, you need a row, a column, and value. When we run this query, it's going to pop this up. It's going to say you need to specify an aggregate, right? Right now, we're just saying we're grouping by. That's not what we want. So we'll click OK. It's very important to note that when you're using crosstabs, after you pick your row and your column, you need to change the total by choosing what you want. And I want to count. But they have all types of things. They have first one, the last one, the expression. You can do a where clause, variance, standard deviation. But we're just counting how many employees we have in each title. Like, are they owners? Are they sales reps? In each country. So I'll do a count and click run. And there we go. We now see that we have our countries going across, our columns, and then we have our titles going down, and then we have a count of how many employees. So inside sales coordinator, we have 1 from US, 0 in UK. Sales manager, we have 1 in UK, none in US. Sales reps, we have 3 in UK and 3 in US. And vice president, we only have 1 in the US. So that's a nice little cross tab there for you. All right, so try that out on your own. You can use different data or the same data. Have some fun with it. When we come back, we're going to switch gears. We have been in what's known as select query for a long time. We're going to switch to an action query, and I'll explain the difference between both. So far, we've been just doing select queries, and now we're going to switch over to action query. Now, the main difference between a select query and action query is that a select query only displays data while an action query modifies it. So a select query can be used to view data, filter it, or even prepare it for further analysis, whereas the action query can be used to manipulate data or even create new data. Now, before running an action query, it is advisable to make a backup copy of the data because the changes that are made by an action query are irreversible. So we want to be sure that we're having our backup so that we're not messing up the original data. So the first thing we're going to do here is I'm going to show you how we can create a table using an action query. I'm going to make two tables that are based off of the employees table. So the first thing we're going to do is close out this query. You could save it if you want. I'm not going to for the Crosstab. And let us go over to the Create tab. And inside of the Create tab, we're going to go to the Queries command group and create a query using query design, just like we did before. Now, let's add the employees table to this query. And we're going to grab in some fields here. I'm going to grab in just the first name and the last name, maybe their hire date, and their country. And at this point, what I want to do is I want to create a table of all my employees that are from the US, because I have a table of all the employees from US and UK, but I specifically just want the US. So what I need to do is run a filter. I'm going to go to criteria under country and do USA, just like we did in the beginning of our training here. But before I actually just run this, if I was to run this right now, it's only running it as a select query. And I know that because if you go to query design under the queries type, you'll see we're still selected on select query. This time when I run this query, I want it to make a table from this selection. So I'm going to choose make table. It's going to ask me what the name of that table will be. I'm going to call it employees USA and click OK. So now when I run this, it's going to do that filtering, but instead of just showing us results, it's actually going to create a table. So when I click on the run button, it says, hey, Joe, you're about to paste 5 rows into a new table. Is that what you want to do? You can't undo the command or reverse the changes. Like I said, it's irreversible. So you're going to click yes. And now if I look at my tables, we have one called not only employees, but employees USA. It's only showcasing my USA employees. If I want to do this again, I would have to close out this query. And at this moment, if you want to try this on your own, I'm not going to save this query, by the way. If you want to try this on your own, though, you're more than welcome to pause the video here and then continue on, because I'll show you right now how to do that one. So once again, I'll click Create, Query Design. I'm going to add the employees table, choose what I want, first name, last name. I think we also did hire date and country. This time under criteria, I'll type in UK, and I'm going to choose to make table. I'll name this one employees UK. I'll click OK on that, and I'll run this. This time it's going to paste 4 rows into the new table, and I'll click yes. So now we have the employees table with all our employees. We have 9 of them. Our UK employees, we have 4 of them. And our USA employees, we have 5 of them. And there we go. So we can use, and I just won't save that, the action queries to actually do something, right? Create a new table based off of whatever we're filtering for, or whatever our criteria is, instead of just seeing results for it. When we come back, we're going to talk about updating tables. What we're going to talk about next is how we can update a table using an action query. So let's actually create a query. We'll go back to Create, Query Design, and we're going to pull the employees table. And I'm just going to pull out the first name, the last name, the title, and let's do their hire date. And we can just run that query just to see the results for now. So once again, we're still using select query to see results. And let's say that we decided to change sales representative to a learning strategist. So after we run this query and we pull the title as part of the query, we can then go over back into our design view in the query design, and we're going to use the other query type called update. So we're going to click on update right now. Now remember, this is irreversible, so we want to be very careful when we do things like this because we can't undo them. So when I click on the update button, now we're in an update query type. And when you click on that update command, you'll notice that it has now an update to option down below. So now we'll enter in what we want the criteria to be in the title, and the criteria is going to be sales representative. There we go. So sales representative, make sure you spell that right. That looks good. And then we're going to say update to, and we're going to choose learning strategist. All right, so we're taking sales reps and updating them to learning strategist. We'll click run. It's going to tell us we're about to affect 6 rows of data. We'll say yes. And now if we pull that table in place, you will see learning strategists instead of sales representatives. So that's how we can then update tables by using that update action query. We can also update tables though with calculations. So let's say we need to keep up with maybe a market increase rate. So we can raise our product price by 5%. Let's actually use a different table for this example. I'm going to close out these tables. And let's create a new query. Once again, I'm going to click on Create, Query Design. And this time, let's use the Order Details table. And we're going to add in, let's do price. And yeah, let's do product ID and let's do unit price. And then we can run that query if you want to take a look at what we have here. And all I want to do now is update all of these prices. So once again, I'm going to go over to my design view. We're going to click update again in our query design tab. And when we click update, you'll see the update to comes back. And inside of that update to row, we're going to add in the unit price field. And we're going to multiply it by 1.5. So remember, when you're adding in fields, you want to be sure that you use square brackets. So I'm going to say unit price, and I'm going to multiply it by 1.5. Now we'll click run. It's going to update all 2,155 rows. I'm going to say yes. And if I want to take a look at that now, if we open up Order Details, everything has now been updated. So this is a way to really manipulate your data all by just running the query, creating some sort of filter or criteria, and then now being able to update it. Try this out on your own, and when we come back, we'll talk about how we can delete queries. We're not going to actually do an example of that because I'll explain it can mess up some of our future examples, but we'll talk about a delete query and what it does. So the next one that we would run into, if we click into Create Query Design, you'll see in the query type, we have delete and append. We're going to talk about append in a moment, but let's talk about delete real quick. See, if we use the delete query type, what it does is it's deleting our records from a table, as long as it meets that certain criteria or condition. Now to make that delete query, you just once again choose the table, the fields you want to delete from it, and the criteria for the records to delete. But deleting queries can be risky because it cannot be undone, like I said. It can erase that data permanently, which is scary. Unlike the update queries, which changes data in a table, delete queries removes the whole record, not just part of it, and you cannot get it back after you run that query. So that's why I always say you should have a backup of your database, and then you can test your queries before running them. Also, you should not delete records that are linked to other tables because this can break the relationships that we've created and mess up your database. So that's why you can use delete, but I would say be a little careful with that. So we won't be doing one of these today, just so we don't mess up any of our examples going into the other sections of today's class. But we will just really talk about what delete can do. It can delete a bunch of records. It can also break relationships, mess up the data, but we're not going to actually do that today, okay? So that's a little bit about our delete. What we're going to get into next is appending data. So being able to take data and combine it together with other tables. So we'll do that in a moment. When appending data, we want to make sure that the two tables that we're appending together have the same exact columns. If they didn't have the same exact columns and they just had a common column, then we can use query joins, which we'll talk about in the next section. But for appending data, they have to have the identical columns. So what better example than to use these employees UK and employees USA table that we created before? They both have the same exact columns, and we'll combine those together to create just the employees table again. So the way we do this is, first off, we need to create a new query. I already clicked on create query, and then I also went to my query design, and now I'm going to select the employees UK. And we're going to add all the columns: first name, last name, hire date, and country. Now that I've done this, I'm going to say append. So go to query design tab, query type, and choose append data. And when we click on append, it's going to ask you what table you want to append to. We'll click the drop down and choose employee USA and click OK. And you'll notice that it now matches those columns: first name, last name, hire date, country. Now all you need to do is just click run. And when you do that, you'll see you're about to append 4 rows. You'll click yes. And now if I look at my table, you'll only see the UK has 4 because we appended the UK to the US. So the US now should be the same as our regular employees table, which it is. It has both USA and UK because we took UK and we appended it to the USA. If we were doing the opposite, then we would have used USA and appending it to the UK. So it worked beautifully. I'm going to close this out. So take a moment. I'll just close this as well and try this out on your own. And when we come back, we're going to talk about query joins. So we've seen how to create relationships between tables and queries. And what we're going to do is click on create, query design, and we're going to just pull in the employees table and the orders table. And you notice that it automatically creates that relationship between employees and orders. And it's a one-to-many relationship. But if you right-click directly on that line there, you'll see join properties. And when you click on that, it opens up those join properties, and it tells you that right now, the left table is employees and the right table is orders. And they're matching it on the left table column employee ID, and the right column on the right table employee ID. Now, these different join types, like this first one here, is known as an inner join. And it says it only includes rows where the join fields from both tables are equal. So it's really saying that it's only returning records that have matching values in both tables. For example, an inner join of employees and orders would only show the orders placed by the employees who work at the company, right? If there was some random person that was not an employee, it wouldn't showcase it. And if they had no orders, it wouldn't showcase it. So it's only matching where there's both an employee and an order to match to that. The second option is known as an left outer join. It includes all the records from the left table, which is employees, and only those records from orders where the join fields are equal, right? So if there's no match, the right side will have a null value, For example, a left outer join of employees and orders would show all the employees and the orders they placed, if any. Employees who did not place any orders would still appear, but would have blank fields for order information. And then that brings me to the last one here, which is a right outer join. It includes all the records from orders, the right table, and only those records from employees where it's equal. So in this one, it's just opposite of the left outer join. It'll return all the records from the right table, matching all the records from the left. If there's no match, then the left side or the left table will have no values, right? So for example, a right outer join of employees and orders would show all the orders and employees who placed them, if any. Orders that were not placed by an employee would still appear, but the employee information would not be appearing. And all you ever have to do is just right click on the line and select join properties to get here and choose which one makes sense for you. And you can click OK. All right. Now, most of the time it does do that automatically for you. You'll see the one-to-many and it chooses that property. But if you ever wanted to change it, you're more than welcome to. The last thing we're going to be talking about today is a parameter query. A parameter query is a way of asking access to show you only data that you want to see. So you can use a parameter query to filter out the data based on one or more values that you enter in when you run the query. So for example, you can create a parameter query that asks you for a start date and an end date, and then it will show you only the orders placed between that date of range. So for this example, we're going to create a new query. I'm going to go to Create, Query Design, and we're going to have 3 tables this time. We're going to grab our products table, we're going to grab our order details table, and let's grab our orders table. And you'll see it's going to create those relationships for us automatically, and now we can build a query off of this. So let's grab a couple of things here. Let's grab the product ID, the product name, let's do the unit price, and let's do the order date and the ship date. And when we run that query, we get a nice little query with all of the information. I'm just going to make that a little bigger there. We have about 2,155 rows of data. And now I'm going to go back to the design view and start to create my parameters. Now to create one, all we have to really do is create a placeholder inside of the criteria section. So if I want someone to enter in a product name to be able to filter by product, instead of actually forcing my own filter, I can put a placeholder by putting a sentence into square brackets, something that makes sense. Like I'm going to say, please enter a product name. And then I'll close that square bracket. So what that's doing is it's opening up a placeholder. Someone will type something in, and then that will replace the criteria. So if I go to run, it says, please enter a product name. Let's see, let's look for chai. And when I click OK, now it's only giving me 38 results of chai. You can also run this again if you wanted to, just by holding down the Shift key. And once you hold down the Shift key, you'll then use the function 9 key, so Shift plus function 9, and that will open it up so you can ask it again. This time, maybe I want to look at tofu. So I'm going to press it. A parameter pops up. Please enter a product name, tofu. Press enter, and now we're looking at tofu. So this just gives a little more freedom to the user to search for something. And all you need to do is to put that placeholder in the criteria. Now we can do also multiple parameters, right? It's not just one. We can maybe go back to our design view and let's add in here ship country, for instance. That's on the orders table right there. And then there, I'm going to put in square brackets, enter a country. So enter a country and close the square bracket. Now when I run this, it says, please enter a product name. I'm going to write tofu, and then it's going to say enter a country. Maybe I'll put USA. And there we go. That's all of the products that was ordered and shipped to USA out of the 5 there. And then, of course, go back to design view, and you can start to create more of these. Now, where it becomes really interesting is we can use comparison operators, the ones we've learned about earlier in this video, like between or and, or, right? So I'm just going to take these out. You could just backspace them, select them, backspace. And let's do for the order date, and let's do a start date and an end date for the order date. So under order date, under criteria, we're going to use the between condition. So I'm going to write between. And remember, you can always right click to zoom in on this. And then we'll write our entire criteria here. We'll say between. And now I'm going to do placeholders. Enter start date. And then we'll do enter. Make sure it's a square bracket. Enter end date. And then we can do that. And then we'll click OK. And now when we run this query, we can enter in a start date. I'll do 1/1/1999. And an end date. Let's do today's date. And it brings up nothing. Let's take a look at our data without this. I'm just going to copy it. Let's run. Let's do 96 through 97 only. So I'll go back to design. Let's put this back in. Run this. I'll do 1/1/1996. And then we'll do 1/1/1997. Let's see what that returns. And there we go. We get 412 results. So that's pretty amazing. We can do date parameters. We can do multiple parameters. And we can even do wildcard parameters. So let's say that under product name, I want to give the ability to just type in a couple of characters and then it pulls it up. I'm going to do like, and then we'll do product name. I'm going to use my and sign, and I'm going to put that with an asterisk symbol. And make sure you put the asterisk symbol. I'll right click and zoom in so you can see this, and those double quotes. So now when I click OK, and if I go to run this, it says enter product name. I'll just put let's do a T. And when I click OK, it brings everything that starts with T. Pretty amazing. So you can have a lot of fun with these parameters. It just helps to give the user some way of running this query and choosing what they want in a different way, right? You're not choosing for them where you put the criteria. You're actually giving them options. Take a moment, try that out on your own. I hope you all enjoyed this video and you got a lot out of it. Take a look at our next video. It's going to be our Access Advanced. And if you haven't taken a look at our first video for the introduction level, feel free to look at that one too. Like and subscribe as always. I want to say thank you. All of you stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you next time. Thanks, everyone.